Good evening, everyone. You're very welcome to this evening's Irish Landscape Institute lecture. Thanks very much to Hazel and Anne and George for organising it here in the Spencer Hotel. So this evening's lecture is looking forward to the future of the profession. You may not necessarily agree with everything that Wolfgang has to say, but I'd encourage you to think about how you see the future of landscape architecture working out and form your own vision. Hopefully, if you don't necessarily agree with everything that Wolfgang says, you'll get food for thought and think about how what you see in the future. And then the next step, obviously, is how we're going to get there and the obstacles in the way. So, Wolfgang is, just get my notes here on the phone, Professor, Head of Landscape Area Research, Ecosystems and Biodiversity in the Technical University of Dresden. So thanks very much, Wolfgang, for coming out to us this evening, and without further ado, Wolfgang Wende.
Yeah, Mark, thanks very much, Hazel. Thanks very much, dear guests, dear colleagues, dear students. Fantastic to see you here. Thanks for inviting me to the Irish Landscape Institute and for a talk on the role of future landscape researchers and designers. So briefly, we run through this structure. I will start to show some examples in the beginning, and I would put this under the term of eco-modernism. And this term pops up if you have a look into the landscape planning, landscape architecture debate in the research literature, and it is being seen critically. And I think we have to see it critically. So let me start with that. And it shows that there is, in all the things that we are doing, a need for so-called strong sustainability pathways, where I will take up two pathways which will deal with climate change issues on the one side and biodiversity protection and restoration on the other side. We have help for this from the political level. There are political objectives which I think will have a significant influence on our landscape architecture discipline. But how will these political objectives and the two pathways towards strong sustainability really affect the landscape? I will show some visions, some projects, some ideas where I believe this will be the pathway in the future, I'm pretty sure. But what about research and design on the way towards more renewable energies on the one side to cope with climate change aspects, climate change issues? And what about the research and design of nature restoration, which will help us to go this pathway towards stronger biodiversity protection on the one side and biodiversity development, which I believe will be the tasks of the future much more than today. Intervening as a design discipline, I think we need to intervene more and maybe play a more acting role in discussion and debates into our society. So how can this look like? And I will shed some light and take some ideas more from the discipline of art and design instead of staying with our landscape architecture discipline. And in the end, of course, conclusion. A need for strong sustainability. This is a guiding hypothesis. And it's not just a hypothesis, it's really their need for strong sustainability. Some projects awarded by our German Landscape Federation. Award from 2023, a quite nice gardening within an urban development which takes place wherever, could be Munich, I think it's Munich, could be another big city. It's 20,000 square meters, which is a real good big project for landscape architects. And it's dealing with the design and the, let's say, decoration, so to say, creating a playground and following also some ecological pathways, creating better ecosystem services, but it is placed in a normal development project that we face everywhere all over the world. And is this really an ecological project? Is this helping us to follow a pathway towards stronger sustainability? Another project awarded 2019. So I mean, really premium, high prestigious projects that I'm showing. And I'm pretty sure it's okay that they have been awarded under certain, let's say, circumstances and background information and ideas that are within our German Federation of Landscape Architects, but it is decoration. They plant trees. In the end, you have really a huge development project where we are those who are putting the green into this development project, which is okay. And please don't get me wrong. I mean, I definitely think it's okay that these projects have been awarded. The problem from my side is that they put sustainability in front of this project and say, this is what we are doing and we are contributing to sustainable pathways in the future. Is that the way? Is this enough? Another award, 2017. The title of the award is Landscape Architecture in Detail, and this is in Cologne, I'm pretty sure. A quite nice project, really a perfect design project, and it is focusing on the details, which is putting into the pavement, lots of effort, to design of this fantastic bench, yeah, in front of this building. So it's really placemaking, I'm pretty sure, and the people are actively using this place, which is fine, which is totally okay. But they put 2 trees in it. 1, 2. It's okay. But don't call it sustainable, please. If you do that, I would really disagree. That's my problem. I will not show too many of these projects, but please let me go on because it comes to a, let's say, point of where we can discuss later on. German Federation of Landscape Architects Award 2017 in the city of Siegen, which is a smaller city, and they invested a lot of money to, let's say, re-establish this riverbank inside the city, which is quite fine. And you can see the results here. So they opened the river to a kind of concrete terrace where people can sit here. They built this new bridge as a better connection between the 2 city sites. They have these kind of terraces, quite nice, pretty good. The problem is they call it green infrastructure as a strategy. And there's no green infrastructure being put in there, nothing. All the green that you see here within the riverbank, all these trees here, they were there existing. That's the point. I mean, stay with what you mean it should be. It's okay to call it an aesthetical, fantastic design, which helps the local people to come together, having meeting places which were not there before. That's totally okay, but don't call it a project with green infrastructure as a strategy. And say or illustrate that it's a way for sustainability. It isn't, if you ask me. This is in a new Humboldt Forum, which is fantastic, believe me. I love this museum. I'm not a critic on that. But if you take a look at the design which has been made at one part of this project, we have to confess there's more around this building, there's more green around this building, they took up things of rainwater harvesting and all these kind of stuff, that's okay. But this is the part to the river Spree, which is the most famous, most important river that is running through the city, and this is the heart of the city. Maybe this is the situation as it really should be at this place. That's okay. But they plant only this one tree. And this is the whole landscape architecture project. I mean, it's fantastic. It's a super design. People are using it. It's a sun terrace, really nice. And I don't think they really claim this is sustainable. That's okay. But do we need more in the future with the upcoming challenges? This is the point where, if you have a look at the discussion popping up within landscape architecture discipline, it's really a term called eco-modernism. So it's a way that we go towards more ecological design, towards more sustainable design, but the critic is that we still stay within, let's say, technical solutions in there. And we should go beyond that. We need the technical solutions to become and have a more sustainable pathway to go, but it's not just putting some green somewhere. It is more. It is really more necessary. And you might have a look like this, the Bosco Verticale. Maybe some of you have seen this in reality in Milano, which is really impressive. And I was really pretty happy to see that this is a symbol for a kind of way towards more sustainability. But if you have a closer look at this project and you look into this project, you see there is still lots of CO2 emissions being put here by the concrete behind the green curtain. There is lots of water which you need for maintaining these trees, which are really looking nice, and you cannot call it sustainable, if you ask me. Maybe we need these symbols to convince the people it's the way for more sustainability, but it is still not sustainable. The challenges are big. Be sure to wash your hands and all will be well. I don't think so. So these are the challenges we are facing. And these are the challenges we are not just facing as the whole society, but particularly as a discipline, like our discipline, landscape architecture. So we can do a lot, I believe, much more than we have done to today. What are the challenges I'm talking about if I say we have a deep need for sustainability pathways? In 2020, the amount of anthropogenic mass exceeded the weight of all global living biomass. And it is super interesting, you will see more examples coming up of the challenges now, that we are right now in the period where we have these turning points, where something happens, which we are not really aware of how to cope with this. That was 2020. You see, this is the illustration showing the whole gigatons, 1,120 gigatons of global biomass we have on our planet Earth. This is us. These are all humans. Sorry, counted only as biomass. 0.01% of all the global living biomass are humans. And they create this stuff. They created this until the year 2020. 549 gigatons of concrete being put into developments. 92 gigatons of bricks that were produced within our entire humanity. 39 gigatons of metals, 65 gigatons asphalt. 1 gigaton means 1 billion tons of matter, of material. So this is really a huge amount. And I like this one, sorry, maybe this is not seen in the last rows. Other 23 gigatons, all plastic, has 8 gigatons, has now more than doubled the total weight of the entire animal kingdom. So we produce more plastic matter than the entire animal kingdom that is existing. This is a great challenge, and we face this tipping point in the year 2020. The challenges are big. In just 40 years, between 1975 and 2014, and now we are 10 years ahead of this also, humans converted more land to settlements than in all previous millennia combined since they had started building the very first villages and towns. And you might have heard about the first city town that has been erected is the city of Ur in Mesopotamia. That was 6,000 years from today. And only in these 40, 50 years we are talking about, we produce more settlement areas than all millennia before. And not just everywhere, but we can focus on spots like Northern America, East-West coast. Have a look on the urban sprawl that took place within Europe, but also in China, spots in Indonesia, around Australia. So we can locate where this happened within this very dense and brief period between 1975 and 2014. So all the materials that you have seen before are placed here, and most of it has been placed within this period of 75 until 2014. So the challenges are big. There is a need to be more sustainable in our development. The good thing is we have political objectives right now, which I will now fold up, and I'm pretty sure, and that is one way to answer the question, where will our discipline go in the future regarding research and design, is that we will be guided by these political objectives. They will influence our landscape discipline and our active work, practical work. And again, it should not be the way for doing greenwashing. We start with the Millennium Goals, with the global goals from the United Nations, which you have heard, I'm pretty sure, which you have heard already about this. And we do not run through all of them, but let me just point on this goal 15, preserve life on land, which is dealing with biodiversity protection and restoration. But is it also about our cities? Yeah, make cities sustainable, inclusive, and design them in a way that it is really in a sustainable manner. It's about infrastructure, it's about protect the planet, it's about health. But I think the most important ones, which we will deal with in the future much more, is the number 11 here and the 15 here. And with climate change issues, of course, we will have to do a lot as landscape architects. The UN goals, Millennium Goals, they were pretty good starting this normative or norm-setting political process, but they are still very vague and still not, operational on the ground for us as landscape architects. But we have even more normative aspects and laws in the background that help to define our work in the future. This is the 1.5 degrees centigrade Paris Agreement from 2015, and it pushed lots of laws, lots of activities on the European level, which determine our work right now. And this is another tipping point. Why? because what happened last year for the first time? We hit the limit and we went beyond this limit of 1.5 degrees centigrade. The average temperature was, average rise was 1.56 or something like that. 1.6, something like that. So we hit this limit already. So it's a strong need to really get active right now. We have to get active. I'm pretty sure that this is guiding our work in the future, and I will show some examples on that later on. The second pathway, which will drive our work, is the Global Biodiversity Framework, GBF, that has been agreed upon by more than 150 states around the world in Montreal, Kunming, in the year December 2022. And this has been taken up by the European Union, and they created the nature restoration law with even more strict and very concrete and very detailed targets for biodiversity restoration. So both is there: climate change, how to cope with this, and how to deal with biodiversity protection and restoration of habitats and ecosystems for biodiversity, because we see that there is a super strict, super fast decline of species on our planet. So what do these laws and frameworks tell us? So the GBF says, ensure that by 2030, at least 30% of the areas of degraded terrestrial, inland water, marine, coastal ecosystems are under effective restoration. And I particularly took this target 2, I guess it is, or 3 from the Global Biodiversity Framework, because this is maybe determining what we have to do as landscape architects in the future. And what did the EU make out of this GBF? They came up last year with this really binding, very strict law, saying EU Natural Restoration Law. This regulation establishes a framework within which member states shall put in place effective and area-based restoration measures with the aim to jointly cover at least 20% of land areas and 20% of sea areas by 2030. When is 2030? Years, 10%. Wow. This is a job motor for landscape architects, biologists, hydrologists, our disciplines, the green disciplines. I just took another target, which is really strictly binding. We have to do that. There is no way to avoid this. It has to be done. It's law. And if we don't do this, I'm pretty sure Greenpeace will come at least 2030 and sue us in front of the EU court. Pretty sure. Those member states who are not going actively. Planting 3 billion additional trees. Who will be the ones who plant trees? I think it's us. I hope it's us. So having these 2 laws, so the Paris Agreement and even some climate laws, and we have the new EU laws on accelerating the development of renewable energies in whole Europe right now. So this is the one pathway, and the second pathway, we have the laws on restoration, on biodiversity. How will this affect the landscape? And I think this is twofold. Our landscapes will look like this. And what we can see right now in Germany is popping up one after another of these photovoltaics, huge power plants. We have already lots of wind farms like this. There will be much more in the future, I'm pretty sure. But where's the design? And where is the landscape designer in these projects? It has a certain design, and I'm pretty sure it's quite important to have this design. It's a technical design. Yeah, these windmills, they look deliberately like this because this might be the most effective way to harvest the energy. And the photovoltaics, they look like this because of this is the most effective way to harvest as much as possible sun rays and energy. But shouldn't it be designed also under aesthetic circumstances? And how would aesthetic implications look like if we come in as landscape architects and say, wow, okay, we can do it even better? I think this would be a task for the future. Question mark. We try to combine these new solar parks with already existing gray infrastructure to reduce the impacts on the landscape. So that's dealt with in the permission processes already, I would say. But can we do more? Can we do better? I think we can. It's not just solar parks, it's not just windmills that will be popping up everywhere where we have to deal with it. It's also these gigafactories, like the Tesla gigafactory southeast of Berlin. There will be more factories coming up, designing AI chips. So all that is also combined with the development of renewable energies, which is combined with the way to electrify our mobility, will also come up with these plans which have impact on landscape scenery, I'm pretty sure. And we should deal with this. We should be part of the design process and not stand aside, just look at it and wonder why there's no one being the advocate for landscape aesthetics. We will have a need for these battery storages. And this is an example, this is a simulation, but I think in Alpha, this is right now under construction already. It's not just that we put some small container like 5, 6 batteries and charging systems into the landscape. No, they will look like this, and they will have the size like this. And if you have a look, what they are able to provide us with energy, it says the plant battery storage can supply this one in this size, 1 million people with electricity for 1 hour. So we have 84 million inhabitants for 1 hour, so we need 24 hours. You can imagine that we need really hundreds of these storages already with our electricity consumption and background we have today. And there will be more electricity consumption if we electrify our mobility sector. Is there a landscape architect involved? Well, they plant some trees here, they plant some trees here. Not actually. Maybe there's a landscape planning ecologist part of the permission process, but they don't talk about the landscape aesthetics, if you ask me. So what to do? Where can we enter with our discipline? And first of all, I would like to talk about renewable energies again. You can see the wind power plants popping up all over Germany. The dark blue areas, they have a high quota of wind farms already. Of course, you can find them in the northern part. But we have these maps on a national level, which help us. You can see the same for photovoltaics. Interestingly, they pop up more in the eastern part of Germany, the dark orange areas, counties, they have a high rate, high percentage of solar fields, and Bavaria is outstanding here. Whereas with windmills, Bavaria is, let's say, a little bit hesitating, so to say. This will change. I'm pretty sure that we will have photovoltaics and even more wind power all over Germany. But what I want to say is, why not starting at this scale level as a landscape designer? Why not starting at the national level? Trying to help our politicians and the county governments, the regional governments to find ways how to deal with these aesthetic questions. We try to do this in a research project, and we're right now in contact with the regional planners with our results. We made an empirical study on landscape and renewable energies and the aesthetic questions of the landscape in Germany on a national level. So why not scaling up our work so on a national level? Shaping visions, shaping ideas on how to cope with the aesthetic conflicts that might come up. So what did we do? We took 822 random photos for an online survey all around Germany. And the sites were selected randomly to be sure to have really a representative view on landscape aesthetics. We made use of a social science online research panel, which is already existing. So more than 3,500 participants, they rated the 822 random photos and gave us more than 44,000 ratings, which was pretty good because it's really a pretty good empirical baseline, which we have. And we were able to calculate these ratings into this map on this scale. And the point is that by doing this, we also identified the 80 and I would say 15 most influencing factors that make people rating a landscape more beautiful or less beautiful. And that's super interesting. It has to do with topography. The dynamics of the landscape is pretty important factor. Letting people voting for more, let's say, beautiful landscape sceneries. It has to do with the habitats, pretty important factor. For example, people mostly prefer heath combined with water. This is the most, let's say, influencing factor from the habitat side. We found out another more social aspect, pretty interesting thing, that women are rating all landscape photos as a little bit more beautiful than men. We don't know why yet. That will be next study. This is significant, so it's really empirical evidence, but the effect size is not that big. So the difference between rating men, women, landscape photos, aesthetic scenery is not that big, but it is there. You can see that. It's totally independent from the occupation, from the job position you have. Funny. So farmers, we can say this, rate the beauty of landscape scenery in the same way like, I don't know, teachers from school. It's independent. We found no statistical evidence for having differences in rating due to the occupations. Anyway, I will not tell all the story about this study. It's just an example that I believe we should lift ourselves up, maybe on the national level. Why not working as a landscape designer, as a landscape researcher on a national level? And I know we are used to work more on the object level, on the planning city level, with the projects that I've shown right in the beginning. But I'm pretty sure we can do more, and we can help to guide those renewable energy developments in the future. But that's not the only level. So what to do with the developments? And I'm pretty happy that Jörg gave me some of the results from it was the last year, Tailwind for Ireland studio, landscape studio within the UCB. And we had some really nice ideas on working on the question how to design the wind plants as such, the battery parks. This design done by Aiding. Why not? Could it look like this? Is this the way to go? To put more aesthetics and landscape aesthetics aspects in the development processes of these battery parks? Maybe. And I'm pretty happy that they really did this job, because this might be a way to go in the future. Even offshore wind parks, above, at, and below the sea, a work done by Ethan. And Ethan said, well, we will have these offshore wind farms on the one side, but why not making use out of this submerged area? Algae production, whatever. This is the way to go for new thinking. Which is unusual, I'm pretty sure. And we're not used as landscape designers to go this way, to have these kind of tasks, but maybe they will be the tasks of the future. The second pathway towards more sustainable development is about nature restoration, as I said. This is an example. Massive restoration and biodiversity offsets. This is right now the biggest reforestation project in whole Germany, southeast of Berlin. And it's really most ambitious. And it takes up the need for biodiversity offsets and for reforestation from the gigafactory that you have, Tesla gigafactory that you have seen before. For this Tesla gigafactory, 175 hectares of, well, non-really valuable woodlands had to be cut. But the law says we have to reforest in the same manner, in the same size. And the decision was to go beyond that, to say, well, we have to reforestate anyway, and we have to plant even more woodlands if we want to follow these guidances and targets from the restoration law. So they decided to create this big project and plant 520 hectares of woodland, which is equivalent to 730 football pitches, just to get an imagination of how big this is. New technique had to be set up. Yeah, you cannot just dig a hole and plant one tree. This is just not enough. It's too slow. So they created this kind of technique where people are sitting here and then they are going through the field and they are planting as massive and as much as possible. And they are able to plant 30,000 trees per day, which is needed to fulfill this, these project targets. And you see, it's not just about reforestation, but creating grasslands, wildflower strips, so really create new habitats for biodiversity protection, for biodiversity ecosystem development. The point is, no design. There were landscape planners, ecologists, biologists, foresters. They were all part of this project, and they came up, of course, with this huge map, which is a certain kind of design, which is a technical design. And there are reasons maybe why this should look like this, yeah, property, availability, and all this kind of stuff, ecological background information. But there was no one, no landscape designer in this project pointing on the fact, oh, okay, but can we shape it in a way that it is convincing all the people around, that it is really making a difference, that it is visible what we are doing here, because we are doing a pretty good job. And we're going for 520 hectares of woodland reforestation. How cool. No one thought about it. It's a fantastic project, but I mean, no one knows. It's invisible because of lack of aesthetic design. That was part of the landscape research module I was teaching in November last year with a very compact course. And
I asked the UCD students to come up with an idea how we can bring in a design on this scale level. How can we do this? How can we make it more visible? How can we make this restoration project really a success project, which is really well known, not just in the villages around, but maybe well known even in the big city of Berlin, which is close, and maybe attract people to see what we are doing here. They came up with pretty cool ideas, I would say. This is a group, let's see, it's Ruby and James, and they came up saying, wow, we make it even bigger. And we want to shape it in a way that it is really also being visible from these big towers, which we place here. So that everyone is able to understand what we are doing here. I found this quite interesting, and it is a design scale, which is not, in most cases, the students are not familiar with it yet, but we have to lift them on this scale. That's what I believe. Scale up your design. Don't stay just with the objects. Scale it up. And this is a scale of 1 to 10,000, maybe 1 to 15,000. Could be the work of our discipline in the future. Another group, Shannon and Jean-Philippe, they came up with the idea to really create this restoration project in a way that you also have attractive touristic points, and make it a destination for Berlin guys to go there to really see and realize that this is a great effort and a great success, not just for touristic aspects, but for biodiversity protection, for restoration, for a modern nature conservation. So they created these pathways, and around this circle with some points, really with facilities that are quite well usable for the bicycle riders, for hiking, for all this kind of stuff. Why not? Pretty good. Interesting. One group, Luke and Connie, they made a design, but they came up with the idea of designing a sign. You know, Germans, they love signs. They want to be guided. Not that the idea. And posting signs, not just these conventional ones we have here, like these nature reserve signs you will find everywhere where we have nature reserves, but designing something that explains us that this is not just nature conservation, it's nature restoration. It is biodiversity offset. And I found the idea pretty good. And I have already an appointment with some guys from our environmental ministry and the nature conservation agency, which is located in Bonn and Leipzig, to talk about this, to push them to come up with a new sign which explains us restoration takes place here. Otherwise, it stays invisible. It's great effort. So you see, I believe there are lots of jobs. There's a lot of work for us to do in the future if we go this way. Will this be enough? Or do we need even something else within our discipline? Do we better create our discipline also in a way that we become more a so-called landscape activist? So how can we intervene in societal debates on sustainability, on ecology, on landscape aesthetics? And I think we can do even more even in that field. What I would like to do now is just step aside from our discipline, have a look what the artists are doing. Because I really believe that this can give us some inspiration also on our future design work. You might have heard about the German artist Katharina Grosse. I don't know. She's really becoming very famous all around the world with her projects. And she is intervening into space, into spatial controversial situations, such like this. This is part of a museum in Berlin, and there was a big debate to sell this property towards developers for housing development. So the state of Berlin want to reduce, let's say, the size of the museum and give these properties to local developers, which is fine, okay, but it is an impact on the artist scene of Berlin, definitely. And that was one of the reasons why she did this. To say, wow, this is a space of art. We want to have it still as a museum, don't sell this to the developers. So it has a certain kind of social, cultural aspect, which I find quite interesting. And she's working with the space as such. This was a project in the US pointing out abandoned spots. Spots that have a value, which are invisible. And she said, you have to do something. She doesn't claim to say this. She always says, I'm just aesthetically intervening. Whatever you interpret in my projects, I don't know. Yeah, she's not interpreting her projects like I do. But if you have a look at the critics, then all the critics say, well, this is an aesthetic intervention, but it has more implications. It is a social ecological intervention done by Katharina Koss. Another project in Denmark, in Aarhus, she did it like this. This is really, that was really super critical, and it is really a radical project, so to say. And I don't know if we as landscape architects would have the power to do it like this, or to go for designs like this with this critical mass. Anyway, it was super controversial, and it started a debate on this road. And that was she didn't say this, but that was really one idea of the project, to show this is a fantastic park on this side that has been cut by this road from the seaside. What a missed occasion to have an even better park if this road wouldn't exist. Yeah, so the park would go until the shoreline here, would be fantastic. But Danish guys, they just fragmented it and cut through this street, and she wanted to make this visible, because it was invisible to the people. Critical project. Is the same sign. By the way, the color is non-poison, don't worry. Yeah? There were discussions, and the locals said, wow, they're poisoning our park, they're poisoning the water. It isn't. This was a spot in the US. I don't know, Rockaway Beach, maybe. Anyway, it was a spot that has been hit by a huge hurricane. And this house has been abandoned after the hit of the hurricane. It was left over, and the artist took this. And Katharina Koss said, well, I will make my intervention here to show what is happening. We are in the period of climate change, and this is happening. And I want to point on this, and something has to be done. Another artist you might know, Joseph Beuys. I've heard about this. And this is really an old project which I want to point on, but it gives so much inspiration, at least to me. I don't know, maybe to you as well. He wanted to plant 7,000 trees, 1982, which is, I found this in Emirates, it's really the world's largest outdoor sculpture ever been done till today. He put these 7,000 big rocks just in front of the well-known, really famous museum in Kassel, city of Kassel, where all the 4 years is the art exhibition, art meeting called Documenta. It was 1982. And he said, this is my gift. The gift is, for each block you can see here, I will plant one big tree in the city, and you have to say where these trees should be placed. So this is really a social ecological sculpture, maybe the first one which you have ever seen. It was super controversial, of course, you know, big debates at that point of time. It was really starting point also of the ecological movement within Germany in the 80s. He was one of the co-founders of the Green Party, and this is intervention. It's hard, yeah, I know, but it's intervention. Seen from today, that was a fantastic project, because all these 7,000 trees, they were planted over the years. There was no way out, they had to do that. Otherwise, you would still see all these rocks in front of the museum. They had to do that. It was really pushing the city administration and the local public to do something. And these are all the spots. It's just an excerpt of the whole city map of Kassel, but you can see all these trees have been planted over the time. So it's really an intervention. This is how it looks today. You can see this all over the city. And seeing from today and talking to the people today, everyone says, what a great project. 40 years ago, most of the people were really hesitating, saying, wow, no, we don't want this project. So I think this is another aspect that will guide us in the future. We might come up with more intervention, with maybe more activism. I mean, you don't see me as Greta Thunberg. I'm not that guy. So why not going in this direction? Doing more activism, trying to push the debate in society towards the question, how can we develop really sustainable in the future? I come up with a certain kind of project which has been done and established last year in Dresden, taking up this more or less idea of we have to intervene, even though people don't like this. And even the city administration is really hesitant on that. This was done by Blaurock landscape architects in Dresden, and they were able really to convince the city to temporarily regreen a spot which is totally gray. There's nothing, there are no trees already existing, so to say. And they said, we make this intervention in the sentence like Beuys did, but of course on a small scale. And I know Jörg, he's very skeptical on all this trashy looking boxes. And he's right. I mean, the design for these boxes could have been much better, to be even more convincing the people in. But I mean, that's another side aspect. The idea behind experimenting, intervening, I love this. That's what we should do more in the future, wherever we are. And it should be on a scale like Joseph Beuys. That would be fantastic. I know how controversial this would be, but why not going for this? And the funny thing is, we went there with the mayor of the city of Dresden. Through this road, you see all these trees. They are just temporarily, but really nice trees put here. The mayor said, yeah, guys, okay, pretty nice, but tell me, what tree is new and which one is old and already existing? And he said, it's all new. There was no tree before. He said, oh, okay. So we hope that this is really giving an impulse, that this situation will be better in the future, and that we will have tree planting really taking place here, not just temporarily, but in the future. And maybe sometimes you need these kind of experiments. They need these kind of interventions which might hurt people, and you get lots of contradiction and debates within the public. Like we had in Dresden, there was really a political party totally against this. We're trying to stop this project. Anyway, we have to go for this. And I would really recommend you have a look into this book done and written by the very nice and really sympathetic colleague James Evans from Manchester University, who says and shows examples where we can do this experimental and intervention-oriented things also on a city scale, on a broader regional scale, and not just staying again on this object scale, which is our normal scale we are working on as landscape architects. We take up the question again from the beginning. What is the role of future landscape research? What can be the role of future landscape researchers and designers? This is my opinion. I don't know whether you want to follow me like Mark said. Yeah, if you contradict, I'm happy to discuss. We have to overcome simply decoration. Of course, we have to decorate, but we have to do more than that. If we face the challenges, and the challenges are big, so we have to think big. We should research, act, and design on a broader scale. And maybe we should not hesitate even working on a national scale. Scale up. Why not try it? Maybe we need a landscape vision for whole Germany, which we don't have yet. Maybe you need a landscape vision for whole Ireland. Do you have it? The challenges are big. Give it a design. If we will talk about these massive restoration projects, massive plantation projects coming up in the future due to the EU Nature Restoration Law, 20% of degraded land areas, then give it a design that it is becoming visible, that the effort and the success is being visible to the people. Otherwise, these projects, I would assume, will fail. The challenges are big. Make interventions, do experiments. Why not experimenting just more? And then see what happens. And if it's failing, then we can put it away again. Is that a way to go? Maybe. So I believe the role of landscape designers will have to change, maybe not change, certainly be greatly expanded. And the final thing is, don't lose your spatial sense of humor by doing that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wolfgang, for the presentation. I just have a question on the strategic side of what you've mentioned in the presentation. I'm a town planner by profession. And I suppose, in my experience, nothing really happens unless there's policy to support it. If you look at wind energy, you gave the example of wind energy, there's commitments in government agreement commitments to increase the amount of wind energy in Ireland up to 9 gigabytes by 2030, which is nearly doubling of what's there. That's going to need an awful lot of battery storage as well, and there's going to be a significant increase in the amount of solar farms as well, all of which have an impact on landscape. But my understanding is that there's not a national strategy on landscape, on analysis, the assessment of it, and policy which is implementing that is locally based. It's all development plans, action plans which are done by local authorities. So they're all working off maybe different analysis of landscape character. It's based on input from elected members who have bringing emotive aspects to it as well. What do you feel is the role of landscape architects nationally in tackling the, I suppose, the challenge of the impact of the doubling of wind energy on the landscape in Ireland and determining where's the appropriate place for this to go and the hard decisions that come from it?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's the same situation in Germany. They put all the burden of decision making onto the lowest level, onto the local administrations. Yeah, so they have to decide where to place and where, how and which way the wind farm has to be established. They give the permission. Which is really a pity because I mean it has to be designed before on this level. That's our idea. The only way that we can cope with this, I mean, we were not asked to design a map like this by the political level. We had only a little money to do this, research money from the German Research Association, not directly from the Federal Nature Conservation Agency or from the Environmental Ministry. They wouldn't give us any money to do things like this because they didn't want it. The point is, we did it. And once this is in the world and you have these maps, it starts to get a certain kind of persuasive impact somehow because it is just there. So it's also kind of activism that we did with our map here. Maybe that's the only way. And once this is in the world, and it is in the world, then you get the door open, at least by the regional planners. They are pretty happy with maps like this on a national level because with that they can work. That's what they say. So maybe that's the only way. I mean, to convince also our politicians to shift our work onto this national scale. Point is where get the money from to do the research. But we did this. I mean, the research agency, they gave us the money, at least a little money to do it. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
because we see that map, well, I've seen that map once before, but I still don't understand. I mean, if you say that the map is showing, as far as I understand the legend,
Yeah.
it shows the scenic beauty values.
Yeah.
So the dark blue areas are of high value.
High value.
And the light blue.
And the light blue areas, they are of lower value perceived by the people.
I understand that. So if you relate it to the renewable energies.
Yeah.
What new is happening? Because typically in the south of Germany, I know Germany well as well, yeah. So kind of this is where we have less wind energy, for example, because of the beauty of the landscape. So how will your map change that? I don't get that point, or maybe I didn't listen well. So
Well, it's not the map that will change this. What is driving us is, let's say, the laws, the subsidies, the necessity for renewable energies, the political target setting all over Germany. And with the map, and that's the idea, the planners, regional planners, they are able to situate these developments that will come up. The political decision to have more wind power in Bavaria, of course, has to be done and driven by the political decision makers as such. But if we talk about I mean, achieving the climate change targets or not exceeding the limits of 1.5 degrees centigrade, something has to be done massively, immediately.
and also in beautiful landscapes, isn't it? So,
Maybe, yes.
yeah,
Our map is not saying don't place wind power plants only in these areas. If they want to place them here in the Black Forest, they can do this. But they have to be assured that this is a landscape which is very much aesthetically seen as a very beautiful landscape. So the conflicts might rise quite high at this point. It's not us to say, don't place them here. But they have the tool, they have the information, which they don't have yet. That's the step forward.
And in this map, like you say, there was a survey of visual images that were sent out. So are these pictures sent out to people living in these regions? For example, people, so among the 3,500 participants, would they be southern Germans more, poverty more, northern Germans. So how do you sort of analyze that? Because
Yeah, no, the social panel, the sample is spread all over Germany. It's not just the regional ones. So we really have a representative, so to say, valuation of Germans as such all over Germany looking at these pictures. And we tested that, whether there are differences between those who allocated themselves in the north towards those who allocated them in the south. There are no significant differences.
And the 80 influencing factors would be identified as what they like in each picture.
What makes landscape nice? 80 factors. I don't have them all in my mind, but whereas the 15 first ones, they are the most important ones. Then, I mean, you can still, with the other factors, you can still, let's say, improve the model as such. But the effect for improving is not that significant as it is with the 15 first indicators that we found.
Can I just have a statement first, just to say that we do actually have a national landscape strategy,
Perfect.
but it's just expired this year.
Oh.
And at the moment, as far as I'm aware, the government or the Department of Environment has not announced whether the.
But we have one, which is nice, yeah.
So there's that, yeah, and then there's the national landscape character assessment. That's my question for you.
Yeah.
Is this like we have a national sort of landscape character assessment that was done probably about 20 years ago, or more. So is this like that on the same sort of?
Well, I have to confess, I don't know exactly the things that you have here and what you have done 20 years ago. Yeah, if it has the same, let's say, empirical level, yeah, maybe not.
So that's sort of how they, when we do a landscape visual and impact assessments.
Yeah.
Assess based upon that landscape character, so we can identify the sort of a national sort of statistical way of analysing what is considered beautiful or not.
And what that was, that a, let's say, that's the idea here, was that a user-based model or assessment that you have done, or was it expert-driven? 20 years ago.
Expert. I think it's
You did it, didn't you?
Well, not involved. You have no national landscape character. We have them for each county which makes a nonsense on any decisions that have to go along the county boundary, because county boundaries typically are valleys or ridgelines of mountains, what we would call one landscape unit, where you make one county saying this area is sensitive, and the adjacent one saying it's we have an example.
Wow, pretty good.
4th year, we were lecture last Monday. We had Galway, which then a landscape on its eastern side was moderate, while Roscommon, another county that didn't have beautiful scenic coastal landscapes. Galway had said this particular landscape in the South Valley was sensitive. So landscape character assessment at national level is a political hot potato that is being ignored for the life of the national landscape strategy. It's it's bubbling under again because of crises, making decisions to make these environmental targets that you mentioned.
Well, the idea here is that we have, for the first time, we have a non-expert based, but really, let's say, user-based perception on landscapes uniquely. That's the new thing here. The idea is we have some other indicators, green space accessibilities into cities, which we just now were able to fed into the biodiversity strategy in Germany. So we were pretty happy as scientists to get this indicator into the biodiversity strategy. And maybe as a next step, that might be something which we can do with this also. That it becomes a part of a more political, let's say, paper document, like strategy document, biodiversity strategy. Let's see. We are under discussion with it. And that's what I mean. I mean, we didn't want to wait until the politicians ask us to do this. We said, no, we have to do this. And then let's see what happens if we can formulate this and show this map, and either we are able to infiltrate this somehow in any political documents, which is not the case yet, for sure. Yeah. But again, I mean, this is, for me, this is just an example that I believe it makes sense that landscape architects should not stay on the object level. Whatever you do on the national level, we should go there. We have to scale up our work. I think that's happening in the future, or I hope so.
Just at the start of the presentation, we showed a couple of residential developments that weren't going very far on sustainability. I wonder, are the contemporary developments in Germany, are they going down a more sustainable route? And if so, in what way? No, still the same.
Even the standards are being lowered to more quickly establish housing now in the big cities, which is understandable in a way. Any more questions? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. for joining us here.
Thanks for inviting me.
Mentioned that some of these things shouldn't be called sustainable. Now, suppose these guys call them sustainable because some metrics that nowadays exist call them that way. Suppose these would have to change. Now, from your experience and taking into account how fast things change, how political decisions are being made, how we are talking about Germany, which is already fairly ecologically sustainable with today's metrics standard, you know.
No.
Well, we can convince the institution anyway.
That's the trick.
How optimistic are you that what changes will make will eventually have an impact that will not lead essentially to our doom?
Well, I'm optimistic. Otherwise, I wouldn't stand here and talk to you on this stuff. The point is what is really what I believe is a step forward, that we have certain kind of law now, which is very strict. Yeah, don't underestimate the EU restoration law. I think this, well, if I talk to all the guys in our ministries, either the regional governments or the federal level environmental ministry, they say, well, we have to put all our power down on this restoration and all this stuff that is mentioned within the EU restoration. So there will be a change, I'm pretty sure. How quick this will be and whether we will achieve the targets 2030, I mean, that's something where I would say I would be more pessimistic. I mean, we have 5 years for restoring 20% of the degraded ecosystems in each member state of the EU. I don't believe that this will come until 2030, but it will certainly push everyone right now to do really things on the ground, which is happening. So there are restoration projects coming up. Hopefully this will be enough. Let's see. And it's us, it's the landscape architects who are in charge and who will do this job. If you look at these restoration projects, of course you need a team. You have a hydrologist, you have the biologist, ecologist, you have the forester, engineers, you have farmers, you have them all on board. In the end, it's the landscape architect who is leading this team, because he or she is the only one who knows how to bring the things on the ground, how to build new habitats, for example, how to restore ecosystems as a whole. And that's the fantastic thing. So it's our discipline. I'm pretty proud of that. But it means there will be a big task to come up for all of us in the future.
I can follow up. of that. It was one of the topics that we discussed, like how landscape architects facilitate the implementation of the nature restoration law. And it's like Europe's aspect is highlighting how landscape architects are communicating. And they provide the link between the different disciplines. And again, I'll go to the pessimistic side of things. If we are still struggling establishing professional rights and getting the landscape architect name out there and get people to know essentially what we're doing, make ourselves essential, do we have time to reverse what we're doing?
That's important. It's no time. It's really putting stress on all of us, and not just the landscape architects. I mean, if you take the targets in 5 years, wow. What would be the alternative? That's always the question. To do nothing, to stay like it is. I don't think this is the way to go. And then maybe we need more of these interventions to push the debate within the society to do more. So that would be a way to go, maybe. Doing, not to say illegal things, yeah, but to force society, push society. I mean, I'm a research scientist who should be neutral. Shouldn't say we have to become activists. But I'm also a designer. I'm a landscape planner. I want to change the world, and my profession is to change the world. So in that role, I always can say, well, we have to become more activists, push society, even politicians, to do more. Maybe with projects like these interventions we have seen before, done by the artists, but show me the landscape architects, they do the same things, yeah, and push the debate like the artists do. I would love to see more projects like this from our discipline. And never lose the sense of humor.
Everything will be better with a bit of money.
I think we're done. Mark, do you want to give some final words? Thanks. And more.